The 20th century left its mark on history as a century of wars, more wars, technological and industrial revolutions, and a push for more modern societal ideals. Ideals like those associated with state owned or privately owned in terms of production and wealth. And the clashes between these ideals laid the groundwork for events and figures that will keep historians busy for, well, centuries. I'm talking two world wars, imperialization on an incredible scale, and famines, political imprisonment the world has ever seen. Oh, please, join Rolling Through History today as we give you our list of the top 6 leaders of these political movements and the numbers behind why they're known as the worst dictators of the 20th century. So to kick the list off at number 6, we have Kim Il-sung. In 1948, on the northern half of a divided peninsula, a new ruler emerged, one who would shape the destiny of an entire people through fear, iron resolve, and unyielding ideological obsession. His name was Kim Il-sung. Under his rule, the Korean Peninsula was thrust into one of the bloodiest conflicts of the entire century, the Korean War. Born of his decision to invade the South in 1950, the war consumed around 3 million lives. A staggering portion of them were civilians, and more than half of that number were from the North itself. Nearly 12 to 15% of North Korea's population vanished in just 3 years of the war. But, fun fact, you see, the war itself was only a chapter in the book that became the Kim Dynasty. Inside of Kim's hermit kingdom, the machinery of political terror ground relentlessly. Purges, executions, forced disappearances, and the creation of a network of brutal concentration camps claimed thousands more. Tens of thousands were worked to death, starved, tortured, or simply erased. Even after the guns fell silent, Kim Il-sung's rigid command economy and absolute totalitarian system sowed the seeds of the famine that would eventually engulf the nation. Some estimates attempt to capture the weight of his rule at 1.6 million deaths, though exact numbers are often lost in secrecy and of fear. His legacy, a dynasty of suffering and isolation, born from a single man who transformed a nation into a prison. The jungles of Cambodia once breathed with life, but in the 1970s, they became a silent cemetery. Its name was Pol Pot, the architect of the Khmer Rouge's Year Zero, a vision so radical, so merciless, that it unleashed one of the worst concentrated genocides in human history. From 1975 to 1979, the Khmer Rouge sought to carve a utopia from the bones of an entire population. Money abolished, cities emptied, families torn apart, religion was forbidden. Nearly 2.4 million Cambodians were murdered by the Khmer Rouge alone. Across the broader decade, though, amid war, rebellion, forced starvation, and systemic extermination, Cambodia lost almost 4 million people from a population of just over 7 million to begin with. Imagine, over 500,000 of a nation's soul just extinguished. People were executed for wearing glasses, for knowing a foreign language, for questioning authority, for not working fast enough, or for simply existing. The truth is, lies became disposable bricks in the hands of an absolute ideologue who believed that perfection could be built from blood. Watt's reign was short, but it was catastrophic to the land. A nightmare of fanatical communism that left a scar that no time can truly heal. 1933. Storm clouds gathered over Germany, ushered in by a man whose vision for his nation would engulf continents. Adolf Hitler, dictator of Nazi Germany, stands as the embodiment of mechanized, industrialized mass murder. Under his rule, an estimated 11 million people were murdered systematically, coldly, ruthless. At the center of his crimes was the Holocaust, the genocide of 6 million Jews executed with horrifying efficiency across a network of death camps. But the Nazi killing machine did not stop there. 3.3 million Soviet POWs starved to death in camps designed for neglect. 1.8 million ethnic Poles murdered as part of occupation. 250,000 to 300,000 disabled individuals were exterminated under Action T4, and 250,000 to 500,000 Roma were annihilated. Political opponents, homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, Serbs, well, I think you get the picture. The list stretches across Europe like a shadow. And beyond the death camps, Hitler's insatiable hunger for conquest ignited the European theater of World War II, a conflict whose civilian and military casualties reached into the tens of millions itself. He did not simply kill, he transformed killing into a state philosophy and ideology engineered to justify annihilation. Across the vast steppes of the Soviet Union, another tyrant reshaped history through terror, paranoia, and absolute power. Joseph Stalin, a man whose rule turned an empire into a graveyard. The numbers are staggering. Around 20 million deaths attributed to policies he oversaw. A storm of a state-sanctioned brutality. Stalin's great purges filled execution pits across the USSR. Over 1 million executions were officially recorded, though historians know the true toll is probably higher. But the deadliest of all were its engineered famines. In Ukraine, the Holodomor claimed 3 to 7 million lives, victims of forced collectivization and grain seizures that left whole regions starving. And then, the Gulag, a vast archipelago of labor camps where millions perished due to exhaustion, exposure, disease, and hunger. Men and women vanished in the frozen wastelands, swallowed by a system built to break bodies and spirits alike. Stalin ruled through fear, so absolute that even speaking the truth became a risk. His legacy is not only measured in bodies, but in the crushing silence of a people forced to worship the architect of their pain. Across the Asia Pacific, from 1931 to 1945, Flames of conquest swept outward from the Japanese Empire, an empire that left devastation in its wake on a scale almost unimaginable. During Emperor Hirohito's reign, Japan's military expansion led to atrocities whose death toll ranges from 3 million to over 30 million people, it's estimated. The invasion of Manchuria, the brutal campaigns in Southeast Asia, and the long, merciless Second Sino-Japanese War carved a path of destruction across the entire continent. China alone suffered 20 to 30 million deaths, civilians slaughtered in massacres, starved in sieges, or executed in reprisals. The Japanese war crimes throughout the war were infamous. The Nanking Massacre, where hundreds of thousands of Chinese were murdered. The Bataan Death March, claiming thousands of prisoners. The chemical and biological horrors of Unit 731, and millions more perished under occupation, forced labor, and systemic brutality. Even Japan itself paid a terrible price. 1.9 million soldiers dead, and hundreds of thousands of civilians lost in bombings and atomic devastation. Now, the question of Hirohito's personal responsibility remains debated to this day, due to the fact that by the time he became emperor, his role as emperor was viewed more as a ceremonial role and not so much administrative. However, the empire's trail of death is undeniable during the era. An era of conquest whose human cost shapes Asia's memory even to this day. Last, we arrive at the summit of human suffering, the deadliest legacy of the 20th century. A man whose revolutionary zeal reshaped a nation and buried tens of millions beneath it. Mao Zedong, ruler of China from 1949 to 1976, presided over a series of catastrophic campaigns that claimed more lives than any dictator in modern history. Estimates ranging from 40 million to over 70 million deaths. The single deadliest event was the Great Leap Forward from 1958 to 1962, an attempt to rapidly industrialize the nation through forced collectivization. Instead, though, it produced the Great Chinese Famine, the worst famine ever recorded. Scholarly estimates place the death toll between 15 and 45 million, with some suggesting that's even up to 55 million, mostly due to starvation. Then came the Cultural Revolution of 1966 to 1976, a decade of ideological fanaticism, political purges, mob violence, and humiliation. Between 1 and 2 million people died, millions more were imprisoned, tortured, or psychologically shattered. Other campaigns, like land reforms, anti-riot purges, and the vast Laojia forced labor system, added millions more to the death toll, turned the nation into a landscape of fear, suspicion, and enforced devotion. His policies did not merely kill, they unmade society itself. And in the shadow of Mao's portrait lies the heaviest toll of human life under any one modern leader.